Welcome to another edition of Chomp Chat, a mental health conversation worth having. On this episode, we introduce you to Taylor Roberts, a recent graduate of the University of Florida. She speaks with us about The Hidden Opponent, a nonprofit focused on breaking the stigma of mental health and athletics advocacy, education, and support. And as always, Dr. Nicole Karcinski, the Director of Mental Health and Wellness at the University of Florida Athletic Department, joins the program. Before we get started, we just wanted to share with you that this episode does contain discussions about suicide, which may be distressing or triggering to some listeners. If you want to avoid this content, stop listening at 13 minutes and 30 seconds. Now, episode 3 of Chomp Chat.
Welcome in, Gators. My name is Dennis. I'll be your host for today's podcast, Chomp Chat, a mental health conversation worth having. And joining me today is Dr. Nicole Karcinski, Director of Mental Health and Wellness, and Taylor Roberts of our women's golf team. Guys, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Let's first go around and introduce ourselves. Dr. Nicole, would you like to go first?
Yeah. Hello. Good afternoon. I am Dr. Nicole Karcinski. I am the Director of Mental Health and Wellness for the Florida Gators. I have been in this position for about 4 months. Prior to this role, I worked on campus at Student Health Psychiatry for 15 years. I'm really excited about this transition and creating a mental health program that can make some lasting impact for our athletes.
And Taylor, you joined us last year on some of our podcasts, so welcome back. And as I mentioned earlier, you're part of the women's golf team, so just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I'm glad to be here. I'm Taylor Roberts. I'm a member of the UF women's golf team, and I've been a member. I'm graduating this semester, so I'll be here. I have been here for 2.5 years, and before that, I played golf at Florida State. So that was a crazy transition to go to rivalry schools. But I have a little bit of a background with mental health with like my own journey, some different nonprofits that I've been a part of, The Hidden Opponent, and recently I've been working on like a crisis hotline, so I have like an abundance of like different experiences with mental health from my own and like helping other people too. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about a topic that can be hard to talk about, but one that's needed.
Well, congratulations on your upcoming graduation. And as you mentioned, The Hidden Opponent is what you're here to talk about today. So just what is The Hidden Opponent?
Yeah, The Hidden Opponent is a national nonprofit that was started by Victoria Garrick. She played volleyball at USC. She's most famous for a TED Talk that she gave. So if you haven't watched it, I highly suggest that anyone listening to this watches it. It's just a great day in the life of what it's like to be a student athlete, and just relating to her can be really helpful. So she created The Hidden Opponent with a woman named Leanne. And both of them spearheaded the movement to reduce the stigma of mental health in college athletics. And really, they provide a lot of resources for different campuses about variety of different mental health, like related issues like men's mental health, like nutrition, breaking the stigma, a bunch of different like coping strategies that you can use while being a student athlete, like distressing before an event and after. And it exists across, I'm not sure exactly about how many states it exists in like college campuses, but I'm the co-director of the Southeast Conference for Division I sports. So I get to work with student athletes that are in those regions, host some monthly Zooms and checkups, and motivate student athletes to work together to reduce the stigma in sports.
So obviously it's a topic you're extremely passionate about. How did you get started on this journey towards mental health awareness?
I really started after I went, I think a mental health journey is always ongoing, as I was talking to Nicole about earlier. But when I was like thought that my journey was towards the end, I realized how lucky I was to have resources that like my parents gave me in like a therapeutic setting, but also just like people that supported me. And I wanted to be there for other people and advocate for it, because in the beginning I thought I was alone. I feel like a lot of student athletes can be like hesitant to step forward, and I definitely was like that in the beginning. But then I realized this giant movement that people are trying to get across, and I wanted to be a part of it.
Dr. Karcinski, you're sitting here seeing a student athlete make mental health a priority. Could you talk more about that and just what that feels like?
So last week we had the opportunity, Taylor and I had the opportunity to sit down and talk just about the status of mental health services here at UF. And one of the things that we talked about was really trying to prioritize the self as far as looking at one's full personhood and how do they define themselves as. And so when we talked, this hyper focus on just themselves as an athlete became really clear. And so us being able to focus on the whole person, and I think addressing the piece of the hidden opponent, which is Victoria talks about, is the mental health battle that's going on inside. And so for her, and this movement is talking about how it is oftentimes a silent battle for athletes.
And I think that's one thing that we're trying to accomplish here is eliminating the stigma in regards to mental health is important. And Taylor, how have you seen growth in maybe more discussions in this topic?
I definitely feel like as more people talk about it, more people are willing to be a part of it. And I think just resources like the hidden opponent, allowing student athletes to have that platform, has been the difference in the last, I guess, 5-10 years. I know also like my dad was a college athlete and they didn't have mental health resources or even know what that was. And like going through my journey, he kind of went through it with me, because in their generation it wasn't really a thing to talk about. And I think that's the biggest progression, that like most people are becoming more comfortable with it now as like more resources are becoming around for us. And yeah, I think it's great to see different organizations coming forward, whether it's the hidden opponent or others, or even just UF, who has had a lot more faculty come on board, like even Nicole, to give us the resources that we need.
And I guess, how excited were you when you found out, Nicole was on staff?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I was super excited to have someone that's passionate about mental health and for student athletes. She's worked with student athletes in the past, so I think having that experience is super beneficial. I actually just completed a thesis on how important it is for a therapist to understand sports too. Like, that's not the only part of my thesis, but it's highlighted in it. And I think that she brings that experience to the table. And having a sports background or working with athletes can be very helpful, like talking to athletes, because we want someone that understands what we're going through on a day-to-day basis, and it's hard to talk to someone who doesn't really get that.
And Doctor, how exciting is that to hear that from a student athlete?
Yeah, thank you, Taylor. I'm really excited to continue to grow the relationships with athletics, with each individual team, but also I think this gives us the opportunity to talk about the Student Athlete Advisory Council and the mental health subcommittee that you're a part of. I know when you and I chatted also ahead of time, you mentioned that you're using some of the hidden opponent resources within the mental health subcommittee. And I was wondering if you could just talk about that a little bit and what resources you've brought to the other athletes here at UF.
Yeah, definitely. Like the hidden opponent has brought up like different Zooms and meditations and different coping skills that I've used personally. So when putting together events for our SAC mental health group, I took what I've learned and has come beneficial for me into the group and done different activities with different athletes in a safe environment. And I've seen like how helpful it can be for just one individual to have a safe space to talk about that with, because besides like that environment, we're almost always with someone looking over our shoulder as student athletes.
And how important is it to continue to build that community? You're just you're looking to help one person that could help another person that can help another person. And how exciting is that? We could see that you're passionate about it, and your excitement to continue growing that community.
Yeah, unfortunately, I won't be here next year to continue that, but I think it's in great hands with the people that will be running it, such as Nicole. And I just think the more people know that this group exists could help the longevity of the program, but also bring more student athletes to the meetings. Sometimes we struggled getting student athletes to them, but I know, like, for me, it made it worth it. If I know how you said, if just one student athlete walked away and like they felt better, and I definitely received feedback that it was helpful, and some text messages that I got from student athletes really made it all worth it for me, because I knew that I did impact someone.
And then how has your journey just helped define who you are today, to give you the confidence to continue moving forward?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like my journey, it's gonna keep going, but I feel like in the beginning I had no realization of like coping skills or like what it took to get out of a funk, and my own journey just taught me like how important it is to be there for other people too, and to just talk about it also, because I read this book called Perfectly Hidden Depression, and for me that just described me to a T, because no one knew that I was upset. Like, I have a AAA personality. Like, I'm going to do stuff no matter if I'm depressed or if I'm not depressed. And so no one really saw like how much I was hurting inside, until I went home freshman year, and my mom somehow knew. She's my mother. But no one else really knew that. And so I think that's the biggest thing to talk about, because oftentimes like we can hide it so well that it's too late at the end of the day. But I was lucky to have my parents who saw that within me, and I think that's the biggest thing for me.
Taylor, I'm wondering, looking back now, when you read that book, what were some of the things that you read in there that really seemed to resonate with you? And how would you share that with other athletes to maybe recognize that that's what they're going through?
Yeah, I would say it felt like more robotic, my life. I really lost track of what I cared about. I felt like I was numb, and so the symptoms I'm explaining is how they describe perfectly hidden depression also, and also that I just kept everything inside. So I think the biggest thing would be to just tell one person, like it can be your friend, like your boyfriend, girlfriend, or whoever it is, just like someone in your life. Just let them know how you're feeling, even though that can be hard in itself. But hopefully someone has a person that they can lean towards in that moment. But even if you think you don't, maybe journal about it or just get it out there somehow, because I think just doing that act can help someone.
And then was it freeing once you just kind of took that first step? I think that's probably the hardest step to take.
Yeah, yes and no. I think it took for me like a couple months to be like, I needed this. And I think that's also a biggest thing too, is because I didn't want to go to therapy. I like was so against it, which is crazy now that I'm talking about the importance of mental health. But it's hard, and it's work that people often like don't want to do. I didn't want to do it, but I'm like the most strongest version of myself sitting here with you today, and I can vouch for that. And even like my journey that I thought was over, like after transitioning to Florida, like more stuff came up, and I felt like strong enough to keep going in a therapeutic journey. And I think it's just always important to check within yourself on like how you're feeling too, and just be honest with yourself. And yeah.
To sort of wrap things up, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the organization that you're working with now with the suicide hotline.
Yeah. So randomly, I went to the Michigan-Ohio State game with one of my friends, and this is how it started. She was doing her roommate was doing this the training for a suicide hotline. I'm like, oh my God, like I think I would love to do that. And so she introduced me to the crisis text line over Thanksgiving. And in December, I did 30 hours of a crisis hotline training in like a week and a half, which shouldn't have been completed that fast, but I was just like so interested in it. And you can do it at your own pace. So I got my certificate in the training towards the end of the December. And so for the last couple months, I guess 4 months, I've been a counselor, a trained counselor on the crisis text line. I do about like 4 to 6 hours each week right now, and it's really provided like a space where I know that I want to go into in the future, because the way I described it to my mom and to Nicole is that I can feel my heart rate increase when someone comes in the line and, put it simply, wants to end their life. And so when I feel my heart rate increase, I can compare it to how I feel on the golf course when I'm under pressure. And for me, like I've never thought that something would compare to that feeling on the golf course. But now that I have this other passion of mine, it just verified that I want to go into this field, and I'll be pursuing a master's in human development and counseling, and hopefully start more change and provide more resources and do whatever I can to impact society too.
Taylor, I'm just so excited for you that you were able to come in today and share your story, but also just be really vulnerable and talk about your journey and the ways that it's impacted you, and also to hear more in the future about how your work with other people and other athletes specifically is impacting them positively.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Gators, I appreciate you taking the time to talk about mental health, and want to thank you for coming in, and certainly want to thank our listeners. And this has been another edition of Chomp Chat, a mental health conversation worth having.
Go Gators.
Thanks for joining today's Chomp Chat. For more information on The Hidden Opponent, you can visit their website, thehiddenopponent.org. And if you or someone you know is struggling, help is available. If you are a UF student athlete, you can seek mental health services through UAA Mental Health and Wellness. For everyone else, you can find resources at psychologytoday.com or findtreatment.gov.